After experiencing over 40 years of faith, I've seen firsthand the good, the bad, and the ugly in the American church. We are under siege at a doctrinal level. Right now, there is a great danger that's infiltrating the walls of our seminaries, our sanctuaries, our pulpits across America to reframe the gospel with an alternative theology that runs contrary to Christ, and it compromises mainstream orthodoxy. It's called Christian leftism. They've taken strategic aim at Judeo-Christian houses of worship in which they promote a distorted view of God, faith, love, sin, and grace. In case you haven't noticed, leftist ideologies have permeated just about every aspect of our society. And at its very core, leftism embraces a secular, socialist, and even a Marxist construct, where man, not God, is the supreme authority. Leftist theology is a distortion. Better yet, it's an eventual departure from mainstream Christian orthodoxy. It's a cool upgrade that downplays absolute truth. They feel that it is their duty to debunk troublesome verses that suggest absolute truth. They revise church history, and they silence those in opposition. And adherents have knowingly or even unknowingly adopted anti-biblical positions such as same-sex marriage, open borders, critical race theory, Marxist agendas, mollycoddling China, and of course, their sacrosanct obsession, and I mean obsession with abortion. To challenge their doctrinal heresy is the equivalent to being unloving. For example, their dialogue generally follows this narrative. To agree with me is to love me, but to contradict me is to hate me. Therefore, you must allow me to indulge in my personal choices over yours. Should you dare refute my beliefs, you must be canceled and silenced. By means of doctrinal malfeasance, or better yet, theological vandalism, these theological drifters have downgraded the Bible to a mere academic story, a mere poetic narrative of man's writings about God rather than how we are to live. And over the years, the steady, slow drip of liberal ideology has seeped into the four walls of mainstream beliefs. It is as subtle as the serpent in the garden, questioning Eve with forbidden fruit, placing doubts in her mind with crafty dialogue that caused her to perhaps put God in contempt, with saying things like, "Did God really say?" See how that works? Today, the same serpent is lying to the bride of Christ with contemporary compromises like, "Come on, did God really say that marriage is only between a man and a woman?" The theological vandalism promoted by the left has taken great liberties in leveraging spiritual-sounding language to reposition the believer to question traditional biblical and moral mainstays. Do any of these phrases sound familiar? Phrases like, "Well, I can sleep with my girlfriend because God just wants me to be happy. His grace will always overlook whatever choices I make." Or another phrase is, "People need to just live out their faith and whatever feels right to them." Or, "We're not to judge because judging is hate." See how that works? Is this starting to sound familiar? Some would contend, well, times have changed. It's now time to deconstruct the Bible. Well, after a few thousand years, let me ask you, is it in need of deconstructing? Please understand, God has, and always will have unconditional love without the acceptance of sin. But God's ways are not subjective to the interpretation of each man's proclivities. They are constant, they're steady, they're sure, and they're trusted. It's frightening to see how many evangelicals are unaware of the great theological drift that has taken place. They've simply been hornswoggled by a counterfeit, fake gospel, inoculated from seeing truth from error. Many seem unable to even clearly articulate what they believe, why they believe it, or better yet, how they should live. Well, at the end of the Bible, there is a small but punchy little book named Jude. Jude brews up some strong coffee when he wrote in verse 3, "Dear friends, although I was very eager to write to you about the salvation we share, I felt I had to write you and urge you to contend for the faith once for all entrusted to the saints." The Greek reads a little bit better. "When I wrote to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to urge you to put up a stiff fight for the faith, once for all delivered to the saints." So what does putting up a stiff fight have to do with the faith? Everything. Yes, we are called to be people who exemplify the love, the joy, the peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and faithfulness. But we also must be the salt and the light of the world in a cultural cesspool. The alarm clock is ringing. Those who have quarantined themselves within the four walls must awaken from being passive dum-dums, hiding out in their religious ghettos on the sidelines of the culture, while the nation is being hijacked by hard left extremists. The left's intentions are insidious, twisted, and evil. But don't be fooled. They're not going to rest until they reduce the cross to kindling and your houses of worship to ashes. You see, the great need of the hour is people who know the Word of God and the God of the Word, right? So be courageous, be strong, be bold, be brave, and contend for the faith once for all entrusted to the saints.